everyone, and welcome back to our State of Game Publisher series. This time, it's on Activision Publishing. And you know what? They're in a pretty weird position as a company, right? They're undoubtedly a juggernaut because of the Call of Duty franchise, but they are sparse beyond that. Call of Duty does look set to ride last year's wave of success into this year's installment, but what can we expect from a publisher with such a wide range of so often ignored IPs? What have they actually been planning there? What is going on for Activision, and what are their prospects, both in the long term and the short term? Well, if that's what you want to know, then you have today came to the right place. Now, two Patreon things. Number one, the daily briefing is there. That's where our news team gets you all the info you need in one single gorgeous daily post. And then thing number two, loot. Yep, do you play a Paladin in any game? Well, we've got the Paladin class pin pre-order, we've got the Tiefling art pack if you're a D&D person, and this month's special, the key art for a prototype game our studio has worked on. All of that on Patreon, and it is the best way to support our coverage and in return get some pretty cool stuff, including, of course, early access to content and BTS. Thank you for your support, and with that, let's get going. Yes, Activision are the Call of Duty people. Bobby Kotick's strategy of going deep on a small number of franchises, that has worked out very well. It drove very high returns and had a lot of focus with the company, but while that is the thing for most of their work, Activision do have a vast library of fan-favorite IPs, and if rumors are to be believed, they may have more than a few projects up their sleeve for this year. So, leaving aside the massive military elephant in the room, what does 2020 actually look like for Activision? Well, of course, in last week's earnings call, Activision confirmed that they will be releasing two what they call library titles this year. We, of course, do now know that one of these projects is a remastered version of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. Now, this is being developed by Vicarious Visions, the Crash Trilogy people, and it actually releases this September. There's something sort of odd, though, about seeing something like Pro Skater in 4K, right? But you can't deny that it looks like a very effective remaster, and that is something that is now a trend for the company. The Activision-led remasters of Spyro and Crash and CTR, they were fantastic, and some of them went far beyond what was needed, and they sold very well because of it. Tony Hawk will release on consoles, and then the Epic Store for PC. And this is an interesting one analytically because they're not deploying it on Battle.net. That is a platform that they own, so it would of course beat the 88-12 split of Epic, so perhaps Epic then sweetened the deal. I mean, they certainly have done that before. It's just interesting when they have their own PC storefront. Now, many people were expecting a sequel, but maybe a remaster makes more sense. It's been nearly 5 years since Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, a disaster of a rushed game that basically was just taking advantage of the license. Tony Hawk's contract actually expired with Activision, and they retained all of the rights to the franchise. Now, in November 2017, Hawk told Wired that he would love to make another title if some new agreement was reached. So, it actually looks like an agreement was reached. A competent remaster of some of, people's favorites PS1 games, that really could garner goodwill, and especially with the Crash team being behind it. Moving on though, sources actually suggest that a new Crash title is in the works, specifically a remaster of The Wrath of Cortex. Now, this information came from the noted Activision leaker, The Gaming Revolution, back in March. Now, the Crash IP, it's in a strong position after the multi-platform success of Insane Trilogy and CTR, so a remaster of one of the other very popular Bandicoot outings, that would of course make a lot of sense and would capitalize on that momentum. People are just in the way of playing Crash. There's then also a PvP Crash title in the works for 2021, as well as a recently released mobile game. Of course, unlike Tony Hawk though, that is something that is unannounced but is expected to release next year. Now, that's about it for the 2020 side of things from them. So what about beyond that? Well, there is said to be a new Spyro title in development, one spurred on by the success of Reignited Trilogy. The Gaming Revolution also leaked this, but the details are very sparse. Now, this could be a new title designed to take advantage of the character's newfound audience, or it could be another remake to further bank on nostalgia, but that said, I think the nostalgia is only really there for the first three. Fans, I'd say, will probably be happy either way, given how Reignited Trilogy turned out, though, because it was very good, but we probably won't be seeing anything there until probably 2021. That's it for that style of IP. We'll talk about them more when we do a studio rundown. Activision, though, they could and perhaps should be looking to fill that gap left by Destiny following Bungie's split last year. So there is that, but in the realm of more core games, Sekiro, 2 million sales in 2 weeks, 4 million by the August after release. FromSoft, though, they are hard at work on Elden Ring right now, and that is a Bandai Namco published game, but they very much could get a go-ahead for Sekiro, I'd imagine. So, and Activision themselves at the time did say that, yes, this project went very well, and it's making them feel more open to doing similar things in the future. So I would expect to see more in the way of Activision actually working as a publisher with third-party developers in the future. And on that topic, really, Activision used to rely on licensing titles from a variety of different IPs, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as an example, but that dried up in 2016 when their deal with Platinum Games expired. So there's that. Skylanders is on ice, along with the entire Toys to Life genre, really. I mean, just ask Lego and Nintendo about how that one's going. Now, at least the Reignited trilogy meant that Spyro exists outside of Skylanders, so it's good he was saved. But beyond that, though, Activision do just oversee this sort of hodgepodge of dormant IP. There's Prototype, Singularity, Blur, Gun, and Soldier of Fortune. Any of those could make for a decent remaster, but some of them, it's a whole lot of shooters from the people that also do Call of Duty. There then is also Guitar Hero, but, with the studio sold and live services shuttered, I do think that is a very, very dormant IP. So, while COD is massive, I think it's clear here that Activision do have quite a lot going on outside of it, and strategically, their plan seems simple. I think it is to use these remasters to gauge interest in the legacy IP. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, because while making a remaster will cost a bunch of money, it's a lot more surefire of a project, right? The game design is done, the level layouts are done, the gameplay mechanics are established, so it's a matter of just recreating all of those things, and then just putting work into nailing the art style and, getting it to actually work well as a game. Lower cost, but as evidenced by their past efforts, fantastic returns. So with those franchises now being back in the limelight, I think we may well see new titles for, well, both of them, because now the audience has been proven, right? And that is the kind of market validation that higher-ups would be wanting to see before they start to launch teams, into wholly new projects that would indeed be quite a bit more expensive and a good bit more risky. Okay, that's that covered. It's, of course, time to talk about Call of Duty. Last week's earnings highlighted that just Call of Duty dominated Q1 2020 for Activision. Warzone has over 60 million players. Modern Warfare achieved franchise sales records despite it, dropping the loot box strategies and the super aggro monetization of the last installment. And then COD Mobile Season 5 delivered the highest monthly in-game bookings since its launch season, Season 1. So overall, everything there united to drive Q1 revenues that exceeded expectations for Activision's management, which will have been a massive win for them. Warzone then will be looking particularly important going forward. The investor meeting actually highlighted that the Battle Royale is now going to be the franchise's third pillar alongside premium and mobile installments. And basically, Activision believes that Call of Duty is a genre in itself and that the franchise continues to expand and change, and that with that, Warzone is going to be acting as the through line that connects it all. And that is a quote. So we've already seen this in Activision offering free Modern Warfare multiplayer sessions for their Warzone players. And I think just having a strong free-to-play wing of that franchise, that is going to be really strong. It's already proven that it does drive those premium sales. So expect to see Warzone kept updated and tied into the premium Call of Duty releases. Now, speaking of which, let's talk about those. This year will, of course, have a premium Call of Duty title. Activision actually confirmed that it is on track, which, to be honest, is a little bit surprising given just how troubled development was rumored to have been on that one. You see, this time last year, Kotaku ran an article that was exposing, quote, major upheaval in studio leadership, whereby essentially Treyarch had replaced Raven and Sledgehammer Games as the lead developers on that project. The article also did claim that this year's title is going to be a Black Ops set in Vietnam. But at any rate, right, the developers appear to recognize that Modern Warfare 2019's better monetization systems were actually the way to go, that they worked out well, and they have pledged to do the same with their 2020 release. Then for Sledgehammer, well, they do appear to have bounced back a little bit, though, and are currently in the middle of a multi-city hiring spree. So between offices in California and Melbourne, 200 people currently work at Sledgehammer Games, and the developer is actually planning to add 100 more people over the next year. So yes, they're obviously staffing up. Now, while we do know that they are working on multiple projects, we're not quite sure exactly what they are. They, of course, could just be working on next year's COD title after difficulties in this year, though there are rumors actually that they're working on another free-to-play Call of Duty title. I mean, they could even be working on that Destiny replacing IP, but that is just something that we really know zero about right now. Then another angle of this that's big to Activision themselves is that the 2020 release could be identified as a vital turning point for COD esports. So the CDL Call of Duty League had a pretty decent launch, at least for Activision, right? It actually helped them secure a massive, many million-dollar deal from YouTube for the rights. The CDL has, however, been struggling recently with the forced switch to online play. Tech setups have struggled to meet the demands of their format, and basically, right, the feedback has not exactly been glowing from people. So COD 2020 could be just the sort of refresh that the league needs, and I think it actually could also be that, especially if it's Blops, the 2020 game might have a more of an arcadey feel, an esportsy feel, and that could be something that would drive the competitive types towards it a bit, where the, I suppose, trying to be more authentic feeling Modern Warfare wasn't really that well received by the more competitive people, at least in my read of the situation. So then, what of the future of COD? Well, following on from the success of Modern Warfare 2's campaign remaster, Modern Warfare 3 is reportedly getting that very same treatment. So presumably, right, that's also just going to be the campaign and not the multiplayer, and that Infinity Ward will follow the same strategy of having the classic maps be put into the current Modern Warfare so that they don't split the player base. Now, it's also reportedly been in the works for quite some time, and it may already be complete. All upcoming titles, of course, are going to be using Infinity Ward's new engine, which, of course, was developed for Modern Warfare. Now, this is actually quite important. This will maintain consistency across all wings of that franchise, and the knowledge base across all their teams will be shared, and it certainly would help Warzone cross-pollination. I mean, it will mean that throwing assets into Warzone will be a lot easier if it's all just working on the same tech. And then as for this year's COD, I mean, all the sources seem to be suggesting that it's Black Ops. Whether it's a sort of reboot like with Modern Warfare or a sequel, it's just hard to tell. But with Treyarch being called in to pick up the pieces on COD 2020, it does mean that next year's release is a bit more in limbo. We just don't really know. And then additionally, while the abundance of COD projects out there is certainly going to be good for Activision now, that momentum may not last, and Activision are going to need, something a bit more substantial for the franchise's off years, because at the end of the day, it will have off years. That is just a normal thing. All in all, though, Activision are in an odd position this year. The bulk of their offerings are just Call of Duty, right? And there's going to be even more from that coming this year. But it is one of the most profitable franchises that is in existence, right? So even though they appear to have little to share beyond that, their financials, I imagine, will be super strong. Now, that said, they do have this diverse range of IPs, and, even with library IPs, or IP titles being due to be released within the next 6 months, we still don't know a massive amount about their long-term game plan. But that said, right now, for them, I think it's time to play it safe publicly and to go hard internally so as to, just secure a good future for the next gen. And I've got to wonder, with Crash, with Spyro, if they've got a lot going on there. And then, of course, there's the Destiny thing. I mean, from what we understand, actually, part of the reason why Bungie were released from that deal, and they actually came to that agreement, was to free up dev capacity. Now, Vicarious Visions, a support studio for Destiny, they are rumored to be doing the Diablo 2 remaster that may exist. And that really would make that more of an Activision project than a Blizzard one. And then, of course, there's also the Tony Hawk game. There's also another studio, High Noon, right? They also were doing Destiny support. And right now, we don't really know too much about what they're doing. Then Toys for Bob, they assisted with Crash Insane. They led Spyro, so I've got to wonder what project they're working on right now. I've got to wonder, really, would it be a new Spyro in the spirit of the originals? Because I would certainly say, based on the quality of that remaster, I mean, that is one of the best remasters ever. I think would be safe in their hands, because even style-wise, their translation of the dragons from the PS1 to the modern system was just incredible. Even though it was a remaster, they did incredibly strong creative work there. So, That is the Activision publishing situation for now. Basically, consistently good quality remasters and a profitable juggernaut that is likely larger than ever because of Warzone and mobile. They're doing pretty darn well. Really, though, we just don't know that much far out about them, and that's where things are really going to matter. It could go in a great direction, right? They could revitalize a bunch of these legacy IPs. They could start doing more third-party publishing, as was evidenced with Sekiro, and they could continue to have Call of Duty be super strong. That would be a great way to see them go in, actually expanding the number of games that they bring out. Or they could, of course, do a very limited number of releases and just stay in that Call of Duty train. Now, that said, based on actually looking at their studios, you know, they've got Beanox, they've got Toys for Bob, they've got Vicarious Visions. I do actually think they're going to be going in the former direction, not the latter. So, much as their business practices and, you know, some of the stuff from the higher ups may not be super palatable to people for, I think, fairly obvious reasons, in terms of their core game pipeline, they actually do pump out consistently good quality stuff. Now, remember, I'm talking about Activision publishing, so War 3 Reforged ain't included in that positive assessment. Anyway, that is it for today's video. Now, if you would like to support us a bit more and also get some cool loot, I mean, here's what our Shaman pin looked like, so the Paladin pins this month and all the other physical loot, and of course the daily briefing. Patreon is the place to support us, and if you would like more content to watch after this video, why not check out our dives into the state of Take-Two Interactive and EA Games. I think you'll enjoy them quite a bit. That's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.